Another day, another new fan game, and another cancelled game. Every day you get on Game Jolt, there is a new fan game. The fans are not running out of games to play anytime soon, I can tell you that. But for every fan game, another one gets cancelled. Remember the one with 30,000 followers? Cancelled. The one with the showbiz cats and VHS filter? Cancelled. And the one that was in development for 4 years? Cancelled. It's no longer shocking news for a FNaF fan to hear that a fan game is cancelled. Every time I browse GameJolt, it's very easy for me to tell which fan games are going to get cancelled later on, because of how many times I've seen it happen. But this instinct of mine and the cancelled fan games epidemic are no coincidence. The fan games that you eagerly wait for are often abandoned for similar reasons. Many of us know the problems that lead to these cancellations, yet we are not trying to fix them. None of the developers in the community, including me, are professionals. We are simply gathering together to make a bunch of games based on a franchise that we enjoyed. So it's no surprise that one of the first and most common reasons for a fan game's cancellation is developers underestimating how much it takes to make the projects they dream of come to life, which typically comes in the form of scope creep. Maybe the project is too ambitious for your current skill level or your team, or it requires more time than you can dedicate to it. Many fan games get popular because they are ambitious, but that happens to become the same reason they get cancelled later on. It's a lesson that we learned the hard way, but you might think to yourself that if so many people cancel their games for this reason, then why don't they lower their scope? That's a great question, and it's because of the mindsets that the bigger a game, the better. And I can't tell you how ridiculous that actually is. No, your game doesn't need 2 floors, 25 cameras, post-night minigames, free roam, and an ultimate custom night in order to be a good game. In fact, if you make a game that big, you increase the chance of the result being bad because you were too busy only making content and not polishing the core parts of the game instead. The scope creep is something that everyone underestimates until they witness it demolish their entire project in front of their eyes. I understand the temptation to make a big game, but if you can't do it, then don't waste your time trying. You'll regret it. And there are more than enough small fan games nowadays to prove that you don't need to make the biggest thing in order to catch people's attention. Not even the FNaF franchise itself was that big initially, yet it was good enough to get us hooked. So stop trying to bite more than you can chew. Not everyone suffers from scope creep. Some people have a capable team or they have dealt with scope creep before and learned how to control it. So what else could be the reason for so many cancellations? Like I said, none of us are professionals and many of us are also young, so personal conflicts and real life situations can play a role in this as well. They can come in many forms. A team member may get criticized and leave the community in response, possibly making the whole team fall apart. Or 2 people disliking each other leads to at least one of them sabotaging the other's game. But it can also get much more serious than that, venturing into harassment, blackmailing, etc. We are not talking about those here. It's ridiculous to think about how some people abandon a project over the most trivial things imaginable, and instead of trying to settle their arguments, they cut connections and abandon everything, including their games. The worst part is that these people may make this same mistake again, leading to even more games getting cancelled. Neither the game nor the people waiting for it should have to deal with the obnoxious behavior of the people behind these games, so don't bring every argument to the public and learn to not cancel your games because of them. But besides everything that happens online, there is also real life which can play a role in the fate of your games. Every day there is a chance of something happening that might or should be more important than your project, and I'm afraid there is no limit to what or how urgent they can be. It might get to a point where you have so little time to work on the game that it would take you many years to finish the game, and by that time, everyone has probably lost their patience and interest. However, it can be hard for people to embrace this and they push pressure on themselves in order to finish the game or make it even bigger in a way or another, thanks to the feeling of obligation. You start to get obsessed with your fanbase and fear disappointing them, and that leads to forcing yourself to work on the game. But please remember that a non-profit fan game is not more important than your well-being, be it physical or mental. So even if you work on your behavior, you can't control what happens in your life, and it's usually best to put your life over a video game. Imagine a day where you get on GameJolt and see a brand new fan game page with really cool graphics and you decide to follow it. For months, you get cool teasers of new characters, environments, props. Then you ask them when the game is coming out and they will tell you soon, and then the game gets cancelled. Or imagine a game where the developer makes a trailer and excites everyone. Then they make a second trailer and excite everyone again. Then they make a third trailer, and then they cancel the game. Or a game where you get shown bits of the extras and custom night mode, which make you think that the game is close to finish, because why else would they work on the secondary parts? So you ask them to show gameplay footage and they say it's not finished. Then they cancel the game. Not exactly usual scenarios to imagine, but I'm afraid that these happen a lot more often than you think. The reason behind such cancellations is not having the right mindset for making a fan game. No, these people are not making the game because they want to just have fun or to do whatever they want. They're making the game for competition. I brought this up for a minute in my video on FNaF in real time, where I mentioned the sheer amount of fan games where you get nothing more than teasers, trailers, and random renders all the time with little to no gameplay footage in between. You could just say, oh, just a few thousand followers, or a YouTuber playing your game. Can't be that enticing to affect the mind of developers that much. And you're completely wrong. Here's the thing, all of this is enticing. Thousands of people following it talking about your game, your favorite YouTuber playing it, getting into the so-called fanbase in order to make money and sell merch. Back in 2019, I was popping my fist when my first fan game got 500 followers, and nowadays they can have followers as high as 30,000. So it's no shocker that so many people pursue that degree of success, but they approach it in the worst ways possible. Do you know how many fan games, lots of them being frequently discussed, are not even 10% done? I can't count how many times people have published their game page sooner than they should. They fantasize about the reception and it makes them publish the page as soon as they start working on the game. The amount of time and effort these teasers and trailers take is always underestimated. For months, instead of finishing a segment of the game, they just make a trailer in order to build hype for a game that is too far from finish. People like to put the blame on Fazbear Fanverse for this esports level of competition, but this problem has been around since just about the beginning of the age of FNaF fan games, because every year people come in with new concepts, new type of content, more realistic visuals, and therefore the standard for fan games rises on a yearly basis. People like to believe that their game is not going to get popular if they don't make it as big as they can, and instead of acknowledging their overambition, they try their best to hide it. The gameplay isn't programmed, let's show people some renders. The game is far from finished, let's make a trailer for Fangame Direct. The night shift segment isn't finished, let's work on the extras. We are constantly making decisions for our games emotionally because of this fear of disappointing people or not getting enough recognition. Nowadays, we are no longer making fan games for fun and as a love letter to FNaF. It's now all about whose game is the biggest, most realistic, most original. You guess the idea. And every day, we keep denying this, no matter how many fan games we witness cancelled in front of our eyes because of this. So, it turns out that the cause of all these cancellations isn't just an obscure drama or lack of motivation every time. Now, how do we lower the frequency of these cancellations? First off, I need you to understand that cancelling a game is not only natural but also perfectly okay. You should not be ashamed of cancelling a game, and neither should you shame anyone else for it. If you feel like not working on a certain project anymore, don't feel pressured to keep it going. Once again, a non-profit fan game is not more important than your well-being, so moving on is sometimes the best option. Now, there is no concrete solution to avoiding cancellation, but here are some advices. When it comes to scope creep, everyone likes to think they can control it right off the bat. They will tell you, trust me, I'm not like the amateurs, I know how to handle the scope of. I'm sorry, but handling scope creep is far easier said than done. There should still be a few things to keep in mind though, right? Yes. 1. The game is always going to take longer to make than you think. 2. Writing features in documents always takes less time than actually making them, so be mindful of how many ideas you're writing down and whether you can pull it off. 3. Bigger doesn't equal better. Just adding all sorts of content to your game is not going to redeem it. It's better to have one good night than 5 insufferable nights. And 4. Before adding anything, ask yourself, does what I want to add to the game make it better or just bigger? As for drama, just grow up. Simple as that. But real life problems, not much you can do about that. But you can still make a smaller game that you can finish even with a limited amount of free time. And if you don't have free time for the game at all, then you should probably just put the game on pause until the future instead. And finally, always remember the point of a fan game. Fan games are made for fun. They're passion projects. They're one of the easier ways to get into game development, where you can share your creations with a community full of people with similar interests. They're not commercial projects. You're not in a race. It doesn't matter if you don't make the greatest thing the human civilization has ever seen. What matters is whether you had fun and learned something out of making it. So just make something you enjoy. Forget about the fame and overreactive YouTubers for a second, because focusing on that will only drag you in the wrong directions. If you make a game that can speak for itself, the recognition will come. The ultimate takeaway? Make your fangames reasonably sized. Forget about marketing them 24/7 and make them because you enjoy it, because you love making games. If you don't, then you'll have a rough time. Thanks for watching.